I went to the U.S. Oyster Festival and I'm going to rank every single food I ate while I was there. Now, this happened on October 20th, 2024, and it's a yearly occurrence right here in St. Mary's County. It's really meant to be a celebration of the Chesapeake Bay oyster, but also we have the U.S. Oyster Shucking Competition, and the winner goes to the World Finals for the oyster shucking. Now, the first food I'm trying, of course, is French fries. Besides seafood, French fries are probably my favorite food. I gave it a taste and had a score in my head, but then my son wanted one too. And while they were good, we decided that they were going to be C tier just because there wasn't enough salt, and most of them were small fries. Now, I was going to get some of this old fashioned soda, but it was covered up with bees, so I decided to go straight to the oysters. Now, these are Chesapeake Bay wild caught oysters. Over the past 10 years, there's been lots of discussion about the difference between farm raised and wild caught, and wild caught basically are meaning that they're wild oysters that watermen will go out and harvest. Now, what I've noticed with wild caught oysters compared to farm raised oysters is basically wild caught oysters can just be a little bit more consistent, especially because you're not sure a lot of the times where those wild caught oysters are from. Now, I knew these ones were from the Eastern Shore, and that means they're going to be a little bit saltier, maybe a little bit more sweetness too, and they didn't disappoint. Adding the special toppings to them and all that kind of stuff makes them taste even better, and having a wild caught oyster every once in a while is something I like to do. But for me, honestly, I really do like a farm raised oyster because you can choose where you get that oyster from and the different flavors you can get on the oysters as well. But as far as a Chesapeake Bay oyster, these are really representative of what they should taste like. A little bit of salt, some good sweetness, and just a good basic oyster. I'm going to go with a B tier for that one. Now, another way to eat Chesapeake Bay oysters, it's pretty traditional down here in St. Mary's County. It's called scalding oysters, and it's like steaming, but you only cook them a little bit. You don't cook them all the way to the point that they open up fully. And the first one I got was actually not good. It was overcooked. But the second one is a great example of what they should look like. So look at this one right here. The perfectly scalded oyster. Now, you can add whatever topping you want on top of here. I put a little bit of Old Bay and then, of course, some cocktail sauce too, because I feel like that's probably the best way to enjoy these. But some people like them, with hot sauce or other stuff like that. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest. Scalded oysters are probably my least favorite way to enjoy oysters, just because for whatever reason, when they're cooked in those shells, they get kind of a muddy taste to them, and this one was no different. While Sawyer said that one was good, I was between a D and an F. I went with D for scalded oysters. Now, besides oysters, we also got some pizza, and I couldn't eat any of it, but my son and his friend both said it was B tier, and now it was time for the farm-raised tent. Now, the farm-raised tent has all different types of farm-raised oysters, all of them from the Chesapeake Bay area, and you can basically go around and use tickets to go buy these oysters. I think it was something like $10 for 6 tickets, and that got you 6 oysters. The first one I'm going to try, though, is the Fallen Pine oyster. Right away, what I noticed is they shucked it so the oyster was on the top shell instead of the bottom shell, so there wasn't a whole bunch of oyster liquor in the bottom of it, which I prefer to have the oyster in the bottom there, but this was still good. I'm going B tier. The next one is Wild Ass Pony oysters, and these are from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and that's actually like the Eastern Shore, like Chincoteague, Assateague area, I believe. And these oysters grow so quickly that sometimes their shell gets brittle in the end, so I try to peel those off when I possibly can so I don't get a bunch of shell in the bite there. But these were a good average oyster. I'm going with C tier for that one. And the next one is a Chopped Tank Terrapin Oyster Company. I like how they shuck those in the bottom of the shell, so you got all the oyster liquor in there. This one actually had a little bit of umami and saltiness. I'm going B tier. The next one is Johnson Bay oysters, and I've had them before, and I gotta admit, they're one of my favorite oysters I had last year at the Oyster Festival, so I actually got 2 of them instead of just one. I gave the first one a taste, and I love how salty it is, but it still has a little bit of sweetness and umami too. This is an A tier Chesapeake Bay oyster to me, especially based on the selection that are right there at the Oyster Festival. And the last oyster I tried is a Nominee Bay oyster. Nominee Bay is just north of me on the Potomac River. This one tasted a little bit sweet, had some mineral taste to it too. I'm gonna go C tier for the Nominee Bay. I ended the day with an Arnold Palmer. This was fresh squeezed lemonade and fresh iced tea. This absolutely hit the spot because it's actually pretty warm out the day. I'm going S tier for the Arnold Palmer, and for the rest of the day, I just sat around, watched the oyster shucking competition, hung out with some of the people around there, and saw this creepy clown to end the day.